I'm going to take a
Pleasure.
moment to introduce you, and then you can introduce yourself. So, everyone who's just popping in, thank you for tuning in to day three of Psychedelics 2025. Up next, we have our last keynote address of the conference. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to Ben Halper from the Zendo Project. My spiel, and then you can expand more on it, is that y'all provide professional harm reduction education and psychedelic peer support services to organizations and communities. So this ties in really well with what we were just discussing in our Q&A about harm reduction. And today you'll be discussing more about your organization and SIT training. So thank you for joining us today and take it away, Ben. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Great to be here. Thank you guys. I did just jump on for about the last 10 or 15 minutes of the last session, and it is so exciting to me to hear what everybody is involved in. The organizations that you guys are part of did not exist when I went to college, and it's so wonderful to see where the movement is, where you guys are plugging in, and all the brand new, interesting things that everybody's involved in. So really awesome to hear that, and it was really great way to start for me to take that in. So, um, awesome. Before I even start sharing some slides here, just let me introduce myself, and then I'll introduce Zendo Project and talk about what I'm going to talk about today. So my name is Ben Halper. I am the event services manager for Zendo Project. Zendo Project is, as the moderator just shared, a psychedelic harm reduction organization. We have many pillars to what we do, but the two primary things, which I'll be focusing on a bit today, is harm reduction education, teaching folks how to provide peer support for somebody who is in any altered state of consciousness, whether it be psychedelic, substance related, or otherwise, and actually going out to events and providing support. So we have been around since 2012. I've been involved since 2017. We have trained and held space for thousands of individuals. And Zendo Project is a big brand in the space, and it's an honor to be able to represent it today. Um, Bit about myself. So, like I said, I've been involved with Zendo Project since 2017. I am the event services manager, so my role is coordinating the sanctuary spaces at events. I've been in that role since 2022. Prior to that, I was a volunteer. I started as a sitter, and then a shift lead supervisor, and eventually a coordinator before coming onto staff. Otherwise, in my professional life, I'm also a professional psychedelic facilitator. I am licensed by the state of Colorado as a natural medicine facilitator. I just got my license. That's just something that started this year. We're the second state that has created a regulated model of psychedelic therapy. So I'm a licensed psychedelic therapist or licensed psychedelic facilitator specifically in Colorado. And I'm from the East Coast originally. I was born in Boston, grew up in Rhode Island, and then went to New York for college, moved my way west. I was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for about 5 years, and I'm currently located in Boulder, Colorado. And I've been, again, with Zendo Project since 2017 and traveling all over the country doing work with Zendo. So let me go ahead and share. All right. So a little bit more about Zendo. Zendo Project was founded by, as it says here, mental health professionals and is supported by a team of volunteers that includes doctors, psychedelic therapists, psychedelic facilitators, nurses, social workers, and experts in the harm reduction field. We are a community outreach organization. So we are focused on providing peer support and specialized care for people undergoing difficult psychedelic experiences primarily, or any form of difficult psychological experience, generally at large gatherings, large events, as well as providing training and education to a variety of different groups in our model of compassionate care. Our inception, as I said, was in 2012. That was at Burning Man. We've been at Burning Man every year that has existed since. And since then, we've grown to care for thousands of people across the country and internationally as well. We were incubated by MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, for 10 years, and then we became our own 501c3 nonprofit organization in 2023. Our mission is to provide peer-based compassionate care at events and offer educational resources to communities and organizations. We support individuals navigating complex psychedelic experiences emotions, and any other non-ordinary state of consciousness. And reducing, and our effort is to reduce potential harms and foster opportunities for deeper connection, growth to self and for others. So let me start by, and I know the last session was about harm reduction as well, but I will take a gander at talking about harm reduction as a general field. What is harm reduction? The general definition that we like to say, it is a field that aims to increase knowledge and awareness of the risks of any type of behavior. And obviously, we are specific to substance use and even more particularly to psychedelic usage. Um, Personally, I like to speak of harm reduction as both a set of practices and strategies, as well as a state that one can embody. And I'll give more examples once we get into our first foundational pillar of safe space, what it means to embody a place of harm reduction. But the easiest example I have to give is one of peer pressure. You know, if you're in a social gathering and people are using substances, and if you choose to be supportive of meeting each person where they are and allowing them to navigate their own journey as it relates to substance usage, you are embodying harm reduction. That is, you are embodying that practice. And so that's just an easy example, but I'll speak about that more as we go along. So when we set up a sanctuary space, we refer to the folks who we take care of as guests and the folks who are doing the taking care of as sitters. So as sitters, we aim to create a well-informed community, and we invite honest dialogue about drug use. The quote I have here is that harm reduction practices help destigmatize drug use, to reduce shame and guilt, and ensure the accessibility of resources. Again, this phrase that I used a moment ago, meeting people where they are, it's meeting all of reality where it is nowadays, and understanding that people will take actions like use substance use, which has inherent risks. And so we want to reduce shame, reduce guilt, destigmatize, and allow people to access the resources to do it as safely as possible. As psychedelics and generally non-ordinary states are accessed for sake of healing, growth has become more widely accepted as part of that. And so do the applications of harm reduction, education, and services. As they become more mainstream, these stigmas that have existed for so many years are lifting. And harm reduction is essential to supporting the caring for our communities of healers, psychonauts, friends, anybody who we interact with who may be using substances or psychedelics specifically. And generally, non-ordinary states of consciousness can and will be experienced through your lifetime, through everyone's lifetime, such as through grief or through any form of emotional crisis that a person experiences. And the skills that we train in and embody can support individuals and communities beyond just psychedelic spaces, and can spread in the world in anybody who's experiencing an altered state, so to speak. So that's a little bit kind of generally about harm reduction, and then specifically where Zendo Project lands within that spectrum. So let's talk about this concept a little bit of non-ordinary state of consciousness. We in Zendo Project have started to prioritize using non-ordinary state or altered occasionally, but trying to use that rather than just psychedelic specific. And the reason is, as sort of I just alluded to, every moment in our lives has the potential to be a non-ordinary state of consciousness. You take a walk in the woods, that can engender a non-ordinary state. You can have a deep cry. You can have any form of emotional breakthrough. You can be in a creative process. You can be playing sports. You can be doing deep work, having a deep conversation. Any moment that stretches us, humbles us, or cracks us open in some way, that's something you could consider a non-ordinary state. And so when should we be using these tools that I'm speaking of compassionate care and these four principles? Anytime really you're encountering anybody in any state, and in particular for any form of non-ordinary state of consciousness, they really come in handy. And, you know, another way to say it is they're not just psychedelic tools, they're just human tools. And compassionate care is not reserved for Zendo Project and not reserved for psychedelics. It belongs in our families, in our communities, in our studios, workplaces, with our pets, anybody. And ultimately, it's because non-ordinary states are not rare, right? They're not ordinary. They're not the typical state of consciousness, but it doesn't mean that they're uncommon in any way. And we are navigating them all the time. And these are tools to help us navigate them within ourselves and to support other people experiencing these states. So, jumping back a little bit into what we do in Zendo Project, it has been many years of working with people in non-ordinary states that we've been doing this work. And the 4 principles that I'll be sharing today have come out of doing that work. It's almost very much like Burning Man, which has its 10 principles, which weren't created and then the event was created. It was the event was created, and emergent from that was, oh, here's the way that people are living in that environment and choosing to go about interacting with one another. So too is Zendo Project. The practices of compassionate care, embodying a grounded, loving presence, these sorts of things came about through doing this work, and then it arose from this work. Oh, these are the 4 principles that we are working by, and has helped refine the work over time as well. So again, it's been over 10 years of supporting guests in non-ordinary states. It is a peer-based care. While many of our volunteers do come from mental health practices, facilitation practices, what have you, it is peer-based. So we leave those modalities and leave that hat on the side, and we are approaching each individual as a peer. And when I personally started volunteering, I was a computer sciences graduate with no mental health training, no training whatsoever about how to hold compassionate space for another human being. But I was welcomed in and have learned quite a bit by doing this work just under Zendo Project. And my point there is how accessible it is. I want to make that explicit. Being a peer support sitter is something that is accessible to everybody, regardless of your background. And so worth mentioning it in that way. We have supported over 7,500 guests through our event services. We've trained over 5,000 volunteers, and the lessons from the field now inform the Zendo SIT education, sitting and integration training program that we have. And it's rooted in non-directive, trauma-informed, and culturally attuned care. So what are these 4 principles that I'm mentioning? These are foundational to what we do. There is, and I'll go into each one of them, but starting to name them, there is safe space, which we count as the bottom of this pyramid, where it is the foundation of the other principles, is creating and embodying a safe space. The principles that then layer on that are sitting, not guiding, and through, not down. And then finally, the top of the principles is difficult is not necessarily bad. Okay, those are our four principles. Our SIT course is 12 hours. So there's a lot of details and nuance that we will not have time for today. If you're interested in learning more, including have the opportunity to practice these skills, we offer the SIT training several times a year. I think that now it's upwards of 6 or 7 times. So mentioning that here. So moving into these principles, again, safe space is the foundational principle. It emphasizes, and I'll speak about this in more detail in a moment, but safety is not universal, okay? It is co-created and it is fluid. Feeling safe means different things to different people. And what are the qualities of a space that make you feel safe, or the qualities of a friend that makes you feel safe with them to share something vulnerable? Each person has their unique way of feeling safe. And so that's something each person can check in with themselves. And as I'll explain, we are trying to create, embody safe space in a way that allows for safety to be engendered for anybody who enters our space. So, how to tend to safety? As a primary focus as an organization has been to create sanctuary spaces to support the safety of guests at events. This principle of safe space, of tending to safety, both refers to the physical spaces that we design to help protect guests from harm or potential harm, and it has since evolved to encompass a broader scope of what safety means, which invites the action of tending to safety on emotional and psychological levels as well. And given our understanding of trauma and cultural considerations, there really is no way to guarantee conditions that will create a sense of safety for everyone, particularly when tending to people from marginalized communities. When considering this in totality as a principle, the first thing we acknowledge is we can't necessarily know and should not assume what conditions will create safety for somebody. So, for example, and this may be on a slide coming up, we don't say to somebody in our space, oh, you're safe here. We can't make that judgment call. That is unique to each person. And that is something that when we talk about, things you might want to think about saying or not saying, that's a good example of not labeling safety as something that somebody that is available to them in a given moment, because we don't know that necessarily. We can create conditions which generally may be supportive for most individuals, and that's what we're trying to do. So, some helpful phrases. I'm going to do my best to create a space that protects you from harm so that what you're experiencing can happen in a supported way. It's an effort that I am in my authenticity trying to take here. This is a supportive space, and you are welcome to be as you are. I will do my best to support you right where you are, and I want you to be comfortable and to have the journey or the experience that you're meant to have. And so these are some of the trainings. We actually provide these trainings in our worksheet with many helpful phrases that can be used when a guest or a client is having a difficult experience. And the purpose of that is there's a pressure, especially people who are newer to this work might feel in these situations. And there's a pressure that you may feel to say the exact right thing. And this is where grounding and self-compassion and non-judgment really comes into play to allow you to tune into yourself first and then respond instead of reacting. And so this cultivation of safe space really starts within yourself, cultivating that safety within yourself so that you are embodying that for another person. And what naturally then arises is generally more supportive. And so that's really what we train in here. And safety is also physical space. And so for anybody who's not familiar with Zendo or hasn't worked with us before, you can see here a picture of what the inside of our sanctuary spaces may look like at different events. And it gives you a sense of where we are working with our guests on site. And we take care to create environments that feel non-clinical and inviting to put our guests at ease with muted colors, soft lighting, comfortable bedding. Maybe in that second picture, we have a water feature in the center, these sorts of things. It's all very a word I might use in such a case is like non-dogmatic, or it doesn't have specific iconography that comes from any religious, new age, any sort of thing like that. We want this space to be a comforting, soft place where there is a palette on which a person's experience may unfold. Again, in a way that we are attempting to make as supportive and engendering of safety as possible. I just saw that comment about our booth at the Psychedelic Science Conference. I want to give a shout out to our amazing team, Jessa Hurst and Iman El Ghazuni, who built that space for us. And thank you for that. So our second principle, once we have this foundation of tending to safety and creating a safe space in place, is sitting and not guiding. And the practice of sitting and not guiding is about supporting someone simply by being with them. And rather than having an agenda of trying to fix or solve, it's embodying presence. And so you're sitting and not guiding the experience in some way. When we are sitting and not guiding, we are working to cultivate a calm, meditative presence within ourselves, one of acceptance, compassion, groundedness, and caring. And we work to promote feelings of trust and security. And again, the language that I'm using is specific. We work to promote feelings of trust and security, but we cannot guarantee that to anybody in any scenario. And ultimately, we let the person, the guest or the client, we let their experience be the guide. So little more specifics on what this means, sitting and not guiding. So when we are sitting, we are not directing, having an agenda, guiding or steering the content of the experience, trying to cure or fix or heal, or trying to push a breakthrough mentality. We are not guiding in any way. What we are doing, and you can see examples here of what it means to just be a sitter, is having a relaxed and attentive posture, a grounded presence. We are listening, providing reflective listening, attuning to their experience, inviting curiosity within ourselves and when appropriate within the guest, and allowing the inner healer of the person having the experience to guide what is occurring. Um, so some useful phrases. Actually, what I actually have here to share is some non-useful phrases, because these things are actually more common when someone is new to this work than you might think, though some of it is a little cringeworthy. But these are all like real examples that people do say in a sitting scenario. When a guest, let's say, is experiencing discomfort or pain, somebody who is trying to direct the experience might say something like, I want you to feel the pain you're feeling, or like lean into the pain, or surrender, or let go, which, by the way, is incredibly not trauma informed. And I think there's a lot of legacy language in the psychedelic sphere around letting go and surrendering and these sorts of things, which we at Zendo Project are trying to reorient the language in the community, that people understand telling somebody to let go may not be supportive for them and may actually be triggering language, or something else like surrender to the experience. So those are all directions that you're trying to lead somebody on. Or even telling somebody, if you breathe, you might feel better. That is directing them to do something. And again, we want to allow their experience to be the guide. The simplest things that you might want to say are, I am here with you. You can say, I notice the experience you're having. It looks like you're in discomfort, and I want you to know I see that. That's the extent of being with and holding space for a person's experience. This is an acronym which I don't want to take credit for entirely. I didn't make it up, but I like to take credit for how much is proliferating within the Zendo world, which is, wait, what does that stand for? Why am I talking? When sitters are new to this work, sitting in noble silence and sitting and just holding compassionate space for somebody is really a new skill. We're so used to oftentimes filling the space with talk, or feeling that if we're not talking with somebody, then we're disconnected from them. And so this little acronym is a cue for a person to ask themselves during when you're holding space for somebody is, why am I talking? Is there an agenda? Is there a directive that I'm trying to get at here? Am I working with my own discomfort? And being able to recognize that without judgment, and to say, it's okay that I feel discomfort in this silence, and I'm now going to recenter myself and choose to continue to hold compassionate space for this person and allow their experience to guide the experience. And so if they offer something in conversation or in dialogue, that is an invitation for you to be in conversation with them. But initiating it, I can't tell you how often at events we'll see somebody who's in a sitting capacity and be in there's somebody who's deep in a journey, and the sitter will just say something like, so where are you from? Or who are you excited to see at this festival? Or something like that. And again, those are perfectly normal type of things that we as human beings ask each other. In this capacity, when somebody is choosing to sit for somebody, we are noticing that and re-arriving into our place of a peer support space holder. Some good questions for a person to ask themselves is, what does what I'm saying have to do with the person in front of me? Do I have any agenda with it? And does it pertain to sitting, presence, or curiosity? Or does it have some other meaning or reason behind it? Some ideas to think about. So a beautiful quote here is, I want to offer, Sitting quietly in contemplative presence of another person, you are not only already doing plenty, you are literally creating one of the most important components needed for healing to arise. By sitting quietly, it's not just that you are not doing something, you are doing something tremendous, which is needed for healing to arise. And as Ram Dass says, the quieter you become, the more you can hear. And so the difference of how supported somebody who is especially deep or having a difficult psychedelic experience can feel when they are alone versus with somebody who is sitting in contemplative silence versus on the other end of the spectrum, somebody who is sitting but is very interactive and perhaps disruptive, you can understand that having that person just being present and truly attuned to your experience is supportive to allowing healing to arise. So that is sitting and not guiding. I'll move into our third principle here, which is through and not down. And this principle was named this way also because of some language which has been proliferating within psychedelic spheres since psychedelics first existed, or at least in the United States, I'll speak of, which is this idea of like somebody needs to come down from their experience, or like, oh, that person's very high. Can we talk them down? It's a concept that has been around forever. And so we developed this principle and then named it this way as sort of in reflection to that idea, where we're offering opportunities for the individual's experience to move through to its completion rather than coming down. And often the best thing for that to happen is time and giving space for the time for the experience to occur. And the skills that I had just spoken of sitting and not guiding, set us up for the simpler and very nuanced skill set of through, not down. Sitting and not guiding is about cultivating presence, listening, cultivating groundedness within oneself, and letting go of agenda, and allowing the inner healing intelligence of the guest or the journey or to come alive and to dictate the experience. So that again was sitting, not guiding. Through, not down pertains to when somebody particularly is having a challenging experience, such as heightened emotional expressions, explorations of grief, anxiety, confusion. And if you're in a space holder capacity supporting them, this is about embodying this principle of through and not down. So how do we do this? Check in with your own projections, your thoughts, your fears, and your agendas. A cue around projections is when we think we're looking out a window, but we're actually looking at a mirror. And when somebody is in difficult or challenging or acutely altered state, it can bring up many things for us when we're in their presence. It may challenge our own edges, leading to discomfort within ourselves. And that may lead us to want to talk them down from the experience or talk them down from their high. And we may want them to make more sense out of what they're going through. This I see most commonly with looping, when somebody is in the presence of somebody else who's in a psychedelic experience who is in a loop, which can be a physical loop, it can be a verbal loop, many ways that it can present, how that creates discomfort for people within the presence. And there's a strong proclivity. I can't tell you how many times I've been asked the question, how do you get somebody down from a loop? Or how do you break a loop? And the answer is you don't. You allow it. You give space for it to move through to its completion, as we are working with people's emotional and psychological safety. And so we tend to it with this compassionate, loving presence to allow it to move through, because any intervention, anything that we try and do to it is now no longer allowing the inner healing intelligence of the journeyer to arrive them where they are naturally needing and leading them, being led by their inner intelligence to go. Our approach is, when this is happening, is to talk through and not down. And this requires a unique skill set of sitting and holding space, and sometimes it's not sitting, it's just being in the presence of, you may not actually be sitting down, of being with discomfort or very complex human expressions and emotions. And it can be a grandiose experience that could be loud, happy, amazed, or the opposite end of the spectrum and be very difficult for that person. And that brings up a lot for us. So we are trying to avoid rushing, fixing, or finding a solution. And by doing so, you're giving the other person and yourself permission to be where they are in each moment of the process and truly trusting. It's a trusting within yourself and within the other person that there is nothing that needs to be fixed. And we are glad to be able to allow it to occur as it is occurring, so long as, again, that foundational principle is in place of safety. We want to make sure there is physical safety, so if somebody isn't presenting a danger to themselves or others, and we create spaces to allow big experiences to take place and for them to move towards completion with a person's physical safety being tended to. So again, we are trusting in their process and trusting in the process of the substance they're on, or again, any non-ordinary state that is particularly challenging or difficult. What you can offer are reflections. This is, true with sitting and not guiding, but in particularly challenging experiences, offering reflection can be very supportive. So if somebody says, I feel so sad, you can respond, this is reflective listening, to say, I hear that you are so sad right now. And it sounds like reductive and simple. I invite you to, the next time somebody expresses an emotional state to you, try it. And you can even ask somebody to do this for you. So if you're experiencing a challenging emotion, this is not anything to do with substance usage or what have you. In any non-ordinary state where there's a difficult emotion in place, ask somebody to affirm that they hear when you express what you're feeling. And then once if they agree to that, express what you're feeling. And then if they've understood what you've asked, they will respond by saying, I hear that you are X right now, and see how that feels. In my experience, even if I've asked the person to do it, there is something that feels so supportive to be acknowledged and to know that I'm heard. And that when I've expressed where I'm at, somebody else is reflecting back to me, I hear you. I see that. And there's an added level of compassion that can come into play. But even just the reflection of I'm heard, it's that you're being witnessed in where you are. And that in and of itself is supportive. So we keep it very simple and brief, focus on the emotion being expressed. And if they say something, you can offer them any ideas that might help identify the emotion they may be feeling, such as somebody says, this person's so annoying, which is a judgment they are offering on somebody else. A reflection would be, it sounds like you might have anger towards them. And again, I've added the word might here because I do think that's important. You are saying that it sounds like, so it's not saying that it is that way, but it's even a little bit more non-directive when you say, it sounds to me like there might be this underlying emotion that you're expressing. And that offers a mirror to the other person to allow them to explore what might be under the surface of the actual words that they're expressing to you. So additional helpful phrases to think about. Letting the person you're with know that whatever is coming up for them emotionally or mentally is okay to you, if that is true. So again, this is a whole, again, I'm consolidating, many hours of training into a very short little presentation here. But there's a whole piece of this around tending to your own self-care when you're in a sitting capacity, and whether you are actually able to hold something as it arises, or whether or not there's opportunities for it to be shifted elsewhere. Putting that a piece of the kind of the nuances around that aside, assuming that what this person is expressing is okay for you, you can tell them that, and sometimes guests will ask us that. I remember in some of my early sits having guests ask me that a lot, of like, is it okay that I'm doing this? Is it okay to you that I'm saying this? Am I too much? Do you really want to be here? Those sorts of things. Being authentic is part of tending to safety, which again, I'll just leave that nugget there. But being authentic in these moments, when you're especially interacting with somebody in non-ordinary state, is an incredibly foundational part of tending to safety. But if you can authentically say that, yes, that is okay with me, that invites safety for them and invites them to share their experience as they like with no expectations or obligations. And another idea that you can offer in this through and not down idea, where you're not trying to get somebody to not have the difficult experience they're having, but offering sometimes when we do fight an experience, it gets harder. I wonder if there's any part of you that can approach this more gently. So it's not offering, here is the way to be more gentle on yourself or that you should do it. It is soft language of invitation and allows them to arrive at what might allow them to approach this more gently themselves. And if the answer is nothing and that I just got to have a hard time right now, that's great. That's part of the human experience. And we are there to be present with that and to witness it and hold space for it. Additional helpful phrases in this same vein. Somebody shares something, especially if there's part of their difficult experience, offering that's very insightful. Again, if it is in authenticity to you, that it feels insightful to you. You can also share, that is fascinating. Would you like to share more about that? It's an invitation. Is there an insight that's coming through? This is a very interesting invitation that you can offer of allowing somebody to orient around the possibility of a specific insight that is arriving for them. Even asking the question, which really maybe this should have come at the beginning of this section, are you open to hearing reflection? We want to get consent around that. When we are setting up our sanctuary spaces at events, it is a inherently non-consensual environment. So again, I do professional psychedelic facilitation. These are clients that I work with for an extended period of time, doing lots of preparation, ceremony work, and integration work. There is a lot of consent and a lot of conversations around consent that take place in that context. In the context of peer support, especially at events that we do as Zendo Project, it is inherently non-consensual. We don't know the person who's walking in. We don't even necessarily know their name. We a good amount of the time don't know what substances they may have taken, and we have not received consent to do anything with them, except for the fact that they have arrived in our space, and we offer them, again, it's not, there's no must here. We offer them, would you like somebody to sit with you? And if they consent to that, a person will sit and hold space for them. Even offering reflections is something that we ask consent for. Are you open to hearing a reflection around that? Sometimes people don't want that. They just want to be heard, but they don't want to hear anything back at all. And that's great. We are meeting each person exactly where they are. And if certain questions are asked, a helpful phrase may be, I'm happy to provide perspective on that in time, but I wonder what would happen if you spent more time inside the question. And this can be very helpful if somebody is asking and trying to do their own projection onto you as a guru or somebody who's going to have an answer for them, and to allow the orientation to remain with their inner healing intelligence. This is an invitation that you may offer. What might happen if you stayed within the question that you're currently with? Oop, I see I was not showing the correct slide that whole time. My apologies. Here's the slide I was just reading. Okay, on to our fourth principle. Difficult is not necessarily bad. So transformation, strength, resilience, and deep wisdom are often gained through our most challenging experiences, and difficult psychedelic experiences are no exception to that. So again, this is about all non-ordinary states. The very difficult experiences often provide our opportunities for the greatest transformation and growth. We are not trying to redirect someone's experience from not being difficult. We are not placing judgment or value on someone's experience, and we can't ever know how hard something is for somebody we're sitting with. I can't tell you again, there's so many examples when I think of these things of being in a space holder capacity, not judging myself, but having my own judgments around the experience of being like, this looks really hard, or this looks very blissful. And then finding out later, I had the incorrect judgment. And that what looked like a blissful experience was incredibly internally difficult, or what looked like a very acute and escalated and difficult experience was incredibly blissful and, uh, just incredibly enjoyable, even though it doesn't seem that way to the person witnessing it. So we try not to place value or our own judgments on what we're seeing. With that said, difficult is not necessarily bad. It is just difficult. And there is research that backs this up. There was a study done with over 2,000 adults who had a challenging experience on mushrooms, and they were asked to report on their single most difficult experience. 84% of those 2,000 people stated that they benefited specifically from the challenging portion of their experience. 60% of these people, who are all speaking to challenging psychedelic experiences with psilocybin mushrooms, 60% said the experience was among the top 10 most psychologically and personally meaningful experiences of their lives. And there was a greater difficulty associated with that. The greater the difficulty rated of the experience, the greater the personal meaning, spiritual significance, and greater endurance of well-being increases. Or for those folks that, again, the correlation is between the more intense the difficulty was, the greater the personal meaning, spiritual significance, and how much enduring well-being a person got from the experience. And so hearing that, we understand difficult, it's not necessarily bad. In fact, it oftentimes results in the greatest benefit. So the foundations of supporting somebody in a difficult experience, non-ordinary state, is normalizing it. It's okay to not be okay. And for, again, with authenticity, if somebody who's in an altered state can look in your eyes and you can say that, and they can see that you believe that it's okay that they're not okay, it can be tremendously supportive for them. Intentional, very intentional. This is comes with a lot of discernment of self-disclosure. If it's brief and for the client or guest and not for yourself. So again, speaking to your own perhaps difficult experiences. Again, this takes a lot of nuance, a lot of discernment, but that can be supportive as well. Reframing and curiosity. I gave some phrases during the through and not down portion, which speaks to some of that. But that can be particularly helpful when somebody is within a particularly difficult experience, and validating the feelings they're having and listening to the story. Yeah. And going back to this self-disclosure piece, just remember that your sharing should leave room for them to be where they are and not imply that they need to feel differently. So if they're having a hard time and they're like, this is pointless, I am having a really hard time and I am suffering, and I'm not going to get any benefit from that. Sharing, oh, I had a hard time once and I got benefit from it, that's already directive. There's an inherent agenda there where you're trying to reframe their experience and move them away from this difficulty about the difficulty place that they're in. And we want to allow that. That is okay. Maybe there's something specific in their life history where they're grappling with the idea of having a difficult experience is not okay. And so we want to allow them to be within the difficulty of the difficulty and hold space for that, meet it with grounded, compassionate, and loving presence, and see where it unfolds from there. Helpful phrases around this difficult and not bad idea. Is there any aspects of yourself that are wanting attention right now? And it helps. It's just a curiosity. It's just a lens to help somebody look at where what the underlying material may be between this difficult experience they're having. have you ever had a difficult experience that has led to more strength or more wisdom? Again, it's not sharing, I had this and or therefore you should. It's an idea to introduce. And if it lands, it maybe is supportive. And if it doesn't land, then it doesn't land. And that's great too. And then this last idea, again, is just pure curiosity. What do you think this might be showing you? The answer could be nothing, or it could be there's something. And it's like, oh, maybe there is some part of myself or something in my life history or generationally or ancestrally that this is really opening up. And when you ask me that question, I now can lean into that curiosity. So these are some helpful phrases when somebody may be experiencing difficulty. A few more. Actually, I'm not sure why this is here. Yeah. I wouldn't say this first phrase. I'll say it in that way. Even though this is hard right now, sometimes difficult experiences can lead to new insights and understandings. This is a inherently true statement. To me, honestly, it does feel a little bit directive to offer that when somebody is in the midst of difficulty. So I actually wouldn't say that. Second one, can what you are experiencing be a gentle teacher? Again, a curiosity, an invitation. And reframing can be supportive, which is what some of this is, as long as you are not denying what their experience is. And that's what I was just saying on the last slide. It's very nuanced here, and we want to be offering invitations and offering cues of curiosity, but being very mindful not to say anything that is denying or trying to circumvent the person from having the experience that they're having. So, a very important note here. Difficult is not the same as bad, does not mean that there is no such thing as a bad trip. Say it again. Difficult is not the same as bad, doesn't mean that there is no such thing as a bad psychedelic experience. We want to acknowledge, excuse me, that harm can happen during psychedelic experiences. And that's why harm reduction as a field and these principles are so important, is because it's an effort to reduce harm. But harm can happen during experiences. And having support can be the difference between challenge that leads to growth and challenge that actually is just traumatizing. I have personally experienced this, and this is why I got into Zendo Project, was having had a very difficult psychedelic experience when I was 20 that was in the inappropriate set and setting, so to speak, and was not held in any such way. And there was no growth I felt imminently coming out of that. In my life trajectory, I can say, because it's what got me into doing this work, it certainly has. But the experience itself was just difficult, and there was no big cathartic healing that came out of it. And that's a lot of why we're trying to help reduce harm. But it's important to understand that there are experiences which are just bad. You can overdose, take too much of a substance, polysubstance uses, mixing substances in a way that leads to a difficult experience. That can just be bad. It can actually not lead to anything great afterwards. Getting dosed, being unknowingly taking a substance, these are all potentially traumatic events. Loss of control or powerlessness during a psychedelic experience is a hallmark of a traumatic experience. And peer supporters help prevent additional harm by supporting individuals and protecting them from danger during an experience. It is still absolutely possible, even in a peer support capacity, for somebody to have a traumatic experience on a psychedelic despite these measures. So please, I've said this earlier, but it's important to rename. Use attunement and discernment before telling somebody that journeys that are difficult are learning opportunities or growth experiences. Sometimes it's more important, actually, it is always more important to validate how scary it can be to feel out of control and to support them in getting additional support. It may end up being a learning experience or a growth experience, but it's not helpful when somebody is just in the hardness of it to try and push an agenda of moving them in that direction, because also it's just not true. Sometimes it doesn't end up that way. Last thing I'll name is that abuse within psychedelic journeys, definitely in facilitated environments, um, especially in non-regulated facilitated environments, is a reality in our world. At least I'll speak. Well, no, in our world, it is a reality, and so we do not want this principle to dismiss those harms which are very real and occur in the world. And it is part of our mission to help resource people who may encounter something like that. So those are our 4 principles. How to get involved. If you're interested, if any of this excites you, first thing is sign up for our newsletter. Go to zendoproject.org, sign up for the newsletter. We send out calls for volunteers for the events that we do. For instance, this summer, we just sent a newsletter a couple days ago, actually, for looking for volunteers for Burning Man. We're going in a new configuration in a partnership with the Black Rock Rangers at Burning Man, which we're very excited about. We have other events coming up. Some actually one on the East Coast, which isn't usually our area, but we actually have one in the Southeast, which is yet to be announced, but that should be coming out soon. A little too late for this one, but just to give you examples, next weekend we are going to be setting up a Zendo space for a 3-day fish run at Folsom Field in Boulder, which is where I live. And we're also going to be at Desert Hearts Festival in Arizona that same weekend, over July 4th weekend. So just an example of some of the events that we have. Sign up for the newsletter and you'll get the announcements as these events happen. And then we have our SIT course, our Sitting and Integration Training, which this was just the smallest piece of it. And I've been allowed to give this offer for this group, which I'm very excited to do, which is use this code sit with me in the next 2 days, basically until June 30th. It is a 33% discount, $197 discount on the SIT course. We offer this many times throughout the year, so you can actually register and then move your registration later if you need to, but that is available to anybody who's watching this or is here now. And then we actually just completed a workshop at Psychedelic Science, and we also had representation on a number of panels, and those will all be on Psychedelic Science's website in the coming weeks or months. So those are some ways to plug in with us, and I hope to hear and see many of you. All right, and with that, I'll move us to QA.
Hi, hi Ben. We have a question. So it's Hi Ben, shout out RI, I'm from there also. I wanted to ask, what would you advise when someone in a difficult altered state, like a panic attack, asks you for help or guidance, for example? What do I do right now? How can you best give an advice that is not guiding? So if somebody asks you, what do I do right now? Like, what would you say? Would you advise?
Um, in the concept that I would want to offer, which is very specific to the situation on how you would convey this. The concept is an invitation to be present with what is happening, to be more present with what is happening, right? The way I like to say it in my facilitation clients is that the difficulty of psychedelic experiences is not always, but oftentimes is the degree to which we are not present or resisting the actual difficulty. And the more that we are in a state of allowing and being present with what is actually arising, the reliably less difficult that may be. And I want to say that very specifically because it's not an effort to make it less difficult, right? If the person is like, how do I make this less difficult? There's a lot of me that is super compassionate for another human being in a very difficult experience. There's also a lot of me that sees that difficulty and is in a place of equanimity around it and says, that's okay. I also understand that based on what they're sharing, sound like they are not in a place of equanimity and that they do want to shift things. The only thing that I can offer there is an invitation to be more present with it. If there's a way that a person feels like they can say that and verbalize it, given the state the person's in, that can be helpful. Oftentimes, it is actually something that you embody yourself. And so it's not so much any verbal response to that panicked, what do I do? Tell me what to do thing. It's they will tune to your nervous system. And if they sense that you are in a place of groundedness, compassion, and equanimity around that, the fact that they're having this experience, it's not, again, it's not trying to talk them down from it, but the way I like to say it is it gives them a touch in to a grounded, compassionate nervous system. It's like, I have a toddler. It's what children do as well, is that they tune themselves to our nervous systems in order to feel regulation. And so when somebody is in that state, the best thing you can offer them is a compassionate, grounded nervous system that has equanimity around their experience. If there is a way to verbally get that idea across of like that the other person can be more present with it, then that's great. But oftentimes that actually isn't accessible. So hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Also, cool to hear you're from Rhode Island. It's not a lot of us out there, so go roadie people.
Okay, I think that might be it on questions. But Ben, thank you so much for your time. This is really insightful and really great to hear about all the great work that you're doing. Hopefully, some folks here can get involved as well. But very grateful to you for doing what you're doing. Thanks for being with us. And I think from now, Bianca is going to take it away with our closing ceremony and awards. So I also just want to extend a thank you to everyone who's been here today, spent their time and energy contributing, whether that's as a presenter or a judge or a viewer. As we said, all of this is free, all this is volunteer. We're all doing what we can to be part of the community. So just sincere appreciation for everyone putting their hard work and time into this. And hopefully we'll all be in touch. And so yeah, with that, I pass it off to Bianca. Thank you again, Ben.
Thanks, guys.